Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley did not begin as opposites. They began in the same world, the same city, the same musical hunger, the same small Memphis label that changed American music forever. That is the part people forget. By the time history finished with them, Elvis was the king, and Johnny Cash was the man in black. They feel like different myths now, but in the beginning, they were just young Southern men carrying gospel, loneliness, and ambition into the same building. That building was Sun Records. In the 1950s, Sun was not yet a museum piece. It was a dangerous little room where American music was being rearranged in real time. Sam Phillips was pulling sound out of people that the rest of the industry either did not hear or did not trust yet. Elvis got there first. He exploded first. The shock of Elvis Presley was not just musical, it was cultural. He looked different, moved different, sounded different. And almost overnight, he stopped being a local talent and became a national event. Johnny Cash arrived in that same orbit soon after. He was different from Elvis in style, but not in hunger. He had that deep, plain, haunted voice. He had the guitar rhythm. He had the seriousness. And he had something just as important. He had identity. Cash did not need to sound like anybody else. But that did not mean he was untouched by Elvis. Nobody that close to the blast radius of Elvis Presley was untouched by him. Cash watched what happened. The speed, the hysteria, the money, the attention, the way one voice could suddenly become the center of the country. And he understood something very early. Elvis was not just another singer. He was the new scale by which fame would be measured. In 1956 came the moment people now call the Million Dollar Quartet. Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, all in the same room at Sun. It has become one of the most replayed symbolic moments in rock and country history. Four men at the edge of legend before the legend had fully sealed around them. But even that famous image hides something more interesting. They were not four equal futures standing side by side. They were four men beginning to move at radically different speeds. Elvis had already become something too large for ordinary life. Cash had not. That difference would shape everything that followed. From a distance, Elvis and Johnny Cash looked like they were traveling similar roads. Both came from Southern poverty. Both were shaped by gospel. Both understood the moral drama inside American music. And both, eventually, would find themselves pulled toward pills, pressure, and isolation. But the machinery around them was not the same. Elvis became global in a way that almost no one had before. That level of fame did not just enlarge him, it trapped him. He became a product, an empire, a schedule, a room that never emptied. And once Colonel Parker and the larger Elvis machine took hold, Elvis's life became harder and harder to steer back toward anything ordinary. Johnny Cash had fame too, huge fame, but not the same kind. Cash could still disappear into roads, bad choices, prison concerts, breakdowns, and reinventions in a way Elvis increasingly could not. That freedom hurt him, but it also saved him. Because Cash spiraled hard in the 1960s. The pills were real. The instability was real. The arrests, the collapse, the exhaustion, all of it was real. He came frighteningly close to losing himself altogether. But there were still openings in his life where change could enter. June Carter was one of them. So was faith. So was the fact that Cash's career, unlike Elvis's, still allowed him to strip things down and rebuild. That is what makes the comparison so painful. Cash watched Elvis from close enough to understand the price of being Elvis Presley. The glamour was real. So was the loneliness. And because Cash knew the edge of addiction himself, Elvis was never just a bigger star to him. He was also a warning. That does not mean Cash stood outside the same danger. Far from it. It means he saw, in Elvis, what happens when the machine grows stronger than the man inside it. By the late 1960s, Cash had started to come back to himself. Folsom Prison mattered. June mattered. The turn toward discipline and stripped-down truth mattered. Elvis, meanwhile, remained huge. But hugeness is not the same thing as health. And that is the untold story hiding underneath the obvious one. The story is not simply that Johnny Cash knew Elvis Presley. The story is that Johnny Cash and Elvis began close enough to each other that Cash could see what fame, pills, myth, and pressure could do to a man who no longer belonged to himself. That kind of knowledge stays with you. When Elvis died in August of 1977, the public saw the loss of a superstar. Johnny Cash saw something more intimate and more frightening. He saw the end of a road he knew too well. Not the exact same road, but close enough. That is why the story of Johnny Cash and Elvis matters now. Not because they jammed at Sun. Not only because the Million Dollar Quartet photograph exists. Those things are famous. They are not the real emotional center of the story. The real center is this. Two men began in the same musical revolution. Both carried gospel in darkness. Both were transformed by fame. Both were nearly destroyed by what fame asked from them. But only one found enough space, enough help, and enough truth to build a life after the collapse. That does not make Johnny Cash stronger in some simple moral way. It makes his survival more complicated and more human. Cash did not escape because he was pure. He escaped because he had openings Elvis did not have, and because when those openings came, he was still able somehow to move through them. He had June. He had second acts. He had the prison records. He had the chance to age into a different kind of authority. Elvis had the crown, and the crown was heavier than it looked. That is why the two names still belong together in the American imagination. Not just because they shared a label, or a room, or an era. Because together they tell a bigger story about what America does to its legends. It adores them. It enlarges them. It imprisons them inside the thing it loves most about them. And sometimes, if the artist is lucky, disciplined, loved, and stubborn enough, he lives long enough to step outside the trap and tell the truth about it. Johnny Cash did that. Elvis never quite got the chance. That is the untold story. Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley did not just know each other. They reflected two possible endings to the same American dream. They started together, and only one escaped.